Welcome back to another edition of Check Call. Today we're covering all things carbon reduction and sustainability with none other than our fabulous guest, the one and only Mike Jarrett, CEO of Jarrett. Welcome back to the show, Mike.
Thank you, Mary.
I am excited today because for anyone who has to suffer through knowing me for specifically the month of April, I am completely insufferable regarding all things sustainability and reducing carbon footprint, both like in a professional setting and then also in your personal life. To be fair, I'm always pretty into it, but April's the time where I really just be like, have you heard about what you can do to reduce your carbon footprint? So I'm just a delight in the coming months. But before, kind of also having you help spread what you guys kind of do over there, can you kind of explain how Jarrett helps its domestic customers kind of reduce their global footprint? Because I know you guys have a really cool little dashboard that you have.
That's correct, Mary. We're a partner with SmartWay, and they're the leading provider in the supply chain industry for measuring your reduction of your carbon footprint. And first, I'll just say this: I think it's incumbent upon all of us in the supply chain industry to look for ways to reduce our carbon footprint. And, the supply chain industry is a major contributor to, global changes in our climate. And I think we have an obligation as leaders in supply chain to always look for ways to continuously get better and figure out how can we reduce our carbon footprint as much as possible. So one way we do that here at Jarrett is our partnership with SmartWay. SmartWay is an excellent organization that provides us with dashboards and other metrics to measure how can we reduce our carbon footprint. And one of those ways in logistics is combining shipments onto one truck so that you have fewer trucks to transport goods to the final destination. The less trucks you have on the road, the less diesel fuel is being burned and the less smog that's going up in the air. So that partnership has allowed us to measure that. We have a number of customers that we're measuring that for, and it's a metric that we look at on a monthly basis. When we have quarterly business reviews with our customers that we're integrated with SmartWay with, we will go through those metrics because they want to know as well. Sustainability is a top of mind initiative for the vast majority of our customers.
It is. Last year I called my shot and I was like, I guess in the end of 2022, I called my shot and they said, sustainability is going to be a big thing in 2023. Everyone's going to jump on it. And then as we know, like a tighter freight market emerged and everybody cut back on spending, which means a lot of those ESG initiatives, unfortunately, took a back seat. But I have really high hopes that 2024 is going to be the year that everybody's like, okay, well, we actually have to start caring about this now. And they actually kind of start doing something about it, which is very exciting to me as a sustainability person, because you're right. It's not just on one person to come through and be like, oh, I can solve all of the carbon emissions problem. It's on everyone. It's truly on every company, every corporation, and kind of every individual person, but ultimately the impact that one person can make versus an entire corporation is, drastically different.
Very much so, Mary. If everyone does their part, then collectively we can truly make a difference in sustainability. And I think that's the thing that I think all of us as leaders in supply chain need to look at is how do we do that balancing act? We all want clean air and we all want clean water. There's a balancing act in this transitional period on how do we also remain competitive as a provider of supply chain services. But I think there's ways to do it where we can accomplish both.
Oh, absolutely. There's that fine balance line of like, you don't have to, overhaul everything and be completely zero carbon footprint overnight, but there's also steps you can take that truly just are better every day. And I really feel like that's kind of the easiest approach. So do you kind of offer this dashboard for all of your customers or only those that kind of opt into this initiative?
Yeah, as of right now, we have it available for all of our customers, but it's only those that have opted in on the relationship with SmartWay. And like I said, we have quite a few that are currently opted in. I think as it continues to be a top of mind area or issue I think we'll see more and more customers opt in as well.
I'm hopeful that they do that.
One other ways that we're doing it here at Jared to advance the sustainability cause is to look at other things that we can make an impact on. And one of the things that we recently have initiated is to install, or we're beginning the process, or not installed yet, but to install solar panels onto our warehouses. We're really excited about that project. It's a fairly sizable project. It's about a $500,000 investment, but we feel really good about the not only the return on investment, but also the sustainability component. We'll be able to drive all our electricity needs for our largest warehouse is about 300,000 square feet, utilizing solar panels being installed on the roof. So that project is kicking off here fairly soon, and we're excited about that as well.
That's going to be really nice. I know it's a pretty sizable upfront cost, but every month when you get that very low power bill or virtually nothing a power bill, that's going to be really nice when you're like, ooh, okay. Because I don't know much about power bills for 300,000 square foot warehouses, but I would imagine that it's pretty high.
Well, and it's pretty high. Now, ours is relatively low compared to other warehouses because our warehouse is relatively new. The oldest section is about 6 years old. And then the other 200,000 of the 300 is about 18 months. We've added on about 200,000 square feet in the last year and a half. So it's new materials. It's all LED lighting that's motion censored. We use an air circulation system to reduce the need for using heat in the summertime. And we have we have R13 insulation in the roof, which helps in the wintertime for keeping the heat in the building. So those kind of things, LED lights and thicker insulation and air circulation systems are all ways to improve reduce the carbon emissions and improve the sustainability.
I absolutely love that. We, on Running on Ice, we actually talked to insulation providers, and there's some really cool stuff happening in the world of insulation, which is a very weird sentence I never thought I'd say or be invested in. But there's so many cool things from down to how if it catches on fire, it doesn't spread or it doesn't smoke, or other things like that that truly do keep things very well insulated. Obviously, in cold chain, we like it when it stays cold, but also that's the same in the summertime. When it's 100 and something degrees outside, you don't want it to be 100 something degrees in the warehouse, or you don't want it to be so hot that your air conditioner is constantly going and can't ever cool anything down. So I like that you guys have taken some of those extra steps to say, no, we're not just gonna run our AC and try to keep it at 70 degrees all summer with the dock doors open. We have some extra things that we do.
Yeah, exactly.
Although I would like to see what an air conditioner, those empty buildings where they test airflow and everything. I would like to see what that looks like on 110-degree day when an air conditioner is trying to keep it at 70. I just think that'd be kind of funny.
I think the air conditioning will be working pretty hard.
Yeah, a lot harder than probably your home was.
Yeah.
So you guys have these dashboards for your shippers that let them monitor their emissions by taking unnecessary trucks off the road, kind of condensing down the shipments, which personally I love. I'm a huge fan of consolidation. It's 10 out of 10 for me. But I guess when it comes to some of the other new initiatives, are any shippers kind of exploring the option of using fleets that have alternative fuels, or is that something that you haven't seen kind of widely get adapted yet?
Yeah, we're on the forefront of that right now. The opportunity for, say, electric trucks, hydrogen trucks, that's still in its infancy. There's a lot of questions coming from our customers that have reducing the carbon footprint as a top of mind initiative for them. But we know that right now it's not widely available amongst the fleets to have electric trucks as well as hydrogen trucks. I think that's coming though. Obviously electric trucks are getting a little more publicity than hydrogen. I personally think that, whatever alternative fuel can get refueling stations or recharging stations faster in the network is probably going to win that race. Both options, the electric using battery as the alternative energy versus hydrogen. Um, Both options are really good for reducing our carbon footprint, but I think it's going to come down to refueling or recharging stations, that network that covers the vast majority of the country. I think that's who's going to win that.
100%. That alone. I know that that's not supply chain related, but that is why I have still stuck to a traditional gas car because if I go on a road trip or I go somewhere, I don't necessarily have to rely on an electric charging station, which they are becoming more prevalent, but they're still not as, readily available as a gas station or something like that, where if I need to hurry up and charge, I'm not kind of stranded in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, my wife and I are one electric car and one gas vehicle. So we're kind of straddling it right now. So my wife drives the electric car because she is generally going in shorter distances. So she's able to recharge her car each night in the garage. Whereas I drive the gas car in case we go longer distances, knowing that there are some shortfalls with places to get recharged. So we're kind of straddling that right now. And it works really well because we know when we're going places that are long distances, we'll take the gas fuel.
All right. So we know that here in the US, we are still kind of on that, whichever one can roll out those charging or refueling stations first. What's kind of happening overseas on kind of the international level? Is there a wider adoption of this? And for those international shippers that people are working with, is this something that they do need to start considering?
Definitely, Mary. We're seeing it actually a little more aggressive overseas, particularly with international ocean carriers. Some of the larger ocean carriers like Maersk and Hapag-Lloyd and some others are introducing ships that are using alternative fuels. So as opposed to using the traditional marine fuel, we're now seeing some ships that are using methanol, for example, as the fuel, which is a very low carbon emission fuel. Also, liquid natural gas is being used for some of the ocean carriers, as well as they're also testing the use of lithium batteries, believe it or not. So, and right now it's more of a hybrid approach. So most of the ocean carriers that are building ships that are hybrid will use traditional marine fuel as needed, but then also utilize whether it's battery or liquid natural gas or methanol as alternative fuels. It's reducing the amount of the marine fuel burning off on those trips from overseas into the United States, which is a really positive trend. Again, it's one of those things that's more of a long-term strategy. It's going to take, anywhere from 10 to 20 years for all of the ocean carriers to switch over to alternative fuels, or at least a hybrid model, but it's really a good sign.
I was going to say, if I was a shipper looking to reduce the amount of carbon emissions and I had imports, that seems like a pretty easy way for me just to say, okay, yeah, I'm going to choose this ocean carrier that is using alternative fuels versus, the other ones because it's like only going to pay probably a little bit more and I'm going to have a huge reduction in my emissions, which is going to be great, especially if, I'm publicly traded and I'm trying to show investors that we are cutting our emissions. I actually really like that. Well done, ocean carriers.
Yeah, and it's I think that particular space within the supply chain is an area that if we can cut emissions on the huge amount of imports and exports coming in and out of the United States, I think it's a great area to reduce emissions significantly without increasing costs significantly to the consumer. There's going to be a slight increase because it is more expensive to operate ships that are running off alternative fuel. However, we feel like it's minimal compared to other technologies that are out there for reducing emissions.
So going back to one of the things that you guys specifically have worked on, the motion sensor lights and the solar panels in your warehouse, I guess what made you guys say, "This is something that we need to put in the new warehouse. This is something that we need to design around," because it's not something that everybody considers, and it does take a little extra thinking and forethought, and, there's an extra cost with it, obviously. So, I guess what made you guys say, "This is very important to us, and this is something that we cannot compromise on?"
Well, I think, Mary, so you have to take the long view on sustainability. There is a higher upfront cost in the building materials that you use to construct the warehouse, the lighting, if it's LED motion sensor, it's going to be more expensive than the traditional lighting. Solar panels, as I mentioned, our project is about a $500,000 investment. The return on investment is anywhere from 10 to 12 years. So if you take the long view, over that 10 to 12-year period, you're getting a return on that investment. And it then makes sense financially, but most importantly, it makes sense environmentally. And I think that leaders in supply chain that are taking the long view, number one, want to make a difference environmentally, but they also have expectations on returns on investment. And the long view, 10 to 12-year return on investment over the full life of a warehouse makes a lot of sense if you take the long view. It does depend on where you're at as an organization, and I think that plays a big part in the decision making we make in our particular area. We feel like it's the right thing to do environmentally, and taking the long view, it makes sense economically as well.
Absolutely. That I think is something that everybody kind of forgets when it comes to sustainability is, in the other aspects of supply chain, I have this routing guide, for example, and I can make those changes and it's going to start affecting my business today. And so there's not really a lot of long-term thinking. But for sustainability, that I think you need that opposite approach of, okay, I'm going to take these small steps today that I can, commit to, and that actually are sustainable steps to really kind of implement it and make that change. Because I think for those who try to do everything at once and make all those changes, it kind of becomes very overwhelming, and it ultimately leads to slightly more failure than it does success.
Yeah, and I'll also add to that, Mary. I think that a lot of, we work with Fortune 500 size companies, and ESG is a big part of their strategy, and rightfully so. So they're pushing back on their vendors, and they're saying, hey, if you're a provider of supply chain services to us, what are your ESG initiatives, and how are you making an impact on carbon emissions? And so I think that's an important part of the business relationship as well.
Yeah, I think I've even read that I've even seen that some, very large companies that are traditionally publicly traded have also, I know that there's not technically a regulation as to how they disclose their emissions, but some of them have started disclosing their scope 1 and 2. And I think it's only a matter of time of, if you are someone that doesn't, necessarily, I don't want to say care, but if this is not something that you're prioritizing in your business, I think that it will be you will almost kind of fall to the wayside because of the shippers that aren't going to necessarily be able to give you business because you don't have these tracking technologies or even the baseline of where your emission stands today. I do think that that's going to be something that will ultimately kind of separate some 3PLs and freight brokers from the rest.
I think it will. I think, again, we're thinking proactively. We want to make these investments now, and taking the long view that at some point the return on investment will be there. We also know that technology moves at the speed of light. So we're going to see a lot of advancements on technology, which will drive down the cost of alternative fuels or carbon emission changes that you can make in your organization without having such a long return on investment. So I think that the time is right to jump in and focus on things that are sustainable, knowing that there is, as time passes, we will see more technologies come into that space to help supply chain management companies not only continue to reduce carbon emissions, but do it at a lower cost point.
I 100% cannot wait for the future to see kind of how this plays out because, I mean, all we have is time. to see how it plays out and see who separates themselves from the pack as some of the early adopters. And I think that those people are going to put themselves in a position to earn quite a penny.
Well, I think the return is there. And again, we all want clean air, we all want clean water. And I think we're heading in that direction with ways, technologies, and other ways to do that and still remain competitive, not only in our economic space in this country, but worldwide.
So that being said, we are running out of time. And since we already know where you stand on hot dogs and sandwiches, today we're going to switch it up a little bit. Mike, if you could only have, no, let me restart that. If you could have a superpower that only worked on Wednesday, what would it be?
I think all of us have, let me start off with the answer to your question, Mary. I think all of us have a superpower. We have one power that we would designate as a superpower. I think all of us have that, right? Because we all have strengths, and one strength would be viewed for each person. So I think everyone has at least one superpower. So my superpower is to trick my brain into thinking that doing things are not as hard as what it really is. That ability to trick your brain comes in handy, especially when things can get really difficult. In the world of supply chain, things can get difficult. So my superpower is I trick my brain into thinking it's really not that hard. But I would say one superpower for Wednesdays would be being able to remove all the pain and suffering across the entire world for just that one day, just so that people know what it's like to, not have pain and suffering.
That is a very beautiful answer, and I absolutely adore that. Well done. Well done. Very selfless.
Well, thank you, Mary.
On that very wholesome note, if anyone, wants to reach out, where can they find you?
So we can be reached, Mary, at gojarrett.com. That's G-O, and then Jarrett, JARRETT.com. That's our website. And if anyone wants to send me an email direct, feel free to do that. I'm at mjarrett@gojarrett.com.
Thank you so much for being on the show today, Mike. I really appreciate it.
It's great to see you, Mary. We'll see you again.
You can find Check Call the Podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Don't forget to check out all the other incredible FreightWaves podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/checkcall. See you on the internet.